in 2025, the world of reality television shuddered beneath a quiet but devastating tremor. One that began not with a scandal or a fight caught on camera, but with a decision whispered in the dim light of a Kentucky morning. When Amy Slayton, coffee trembling in her hand, turned to her sister Tammy and said the words that would echo across the entertainment industry, "I can't do this anymore." That single moment, ordinary, human, fragile, was the spark that would unravel years of staged tears, orchestrated confrontations, and cleverly edited triumphs that had made 1000 ELB Sisters a global phenomenon. The camera crews were still asleep in their hotel rooms, the producers still drafting another week's worth of story beats, when the sisters finally realized that the story had stopped belonging to them. For more than half a decade, they had been fixtures in the machinery of cable television. Two women whose pain, humor, and transformation were packaged into bite-sized segments that could make audiences laugh 1 minute and cry the next. TLC had turned their struggle into spectacle, and in return, the sisters had been granted fame that glittered but also bruised. By 2025, Tammy's once unimaginable recovery had made her a symbol of perseverance. Amy's motherhood had softened the public's perception of her, yet both knew that every victory came with a contract clause, every smile with a production note attached. The day they decided to quit, a storm that had been brewing for years finally broke. When word leaked, first to a gossip blog, then to TMZ, then to the morning shows, audiences were stunned. Viewers had grown up with the sisters' chaos and affection. They had cheered through surgeries, funerals, births, and breakdowns. To imagine that it was all ending felt like losing a weekly ritual. But for Amy and Tammy, it wasn't an ending at all. It was a reclamation. They had spent too many nights crying in dressing rooms, lit by buzzing fluorescent bulbs while producers whispered about story arcs. They had smiled through scenes reshot 3, 4 times until spontaneity became choreography. They had endured headlines mocking their bodies and strangers on the internet dissecting their every word. The money helped, of course, but it was never the fortune fans imagined. Most of the profits vanished into network overhead, legal fees, and the endless churn of production. So when the sisters finally told TLC they were done, they weren't just walking away from a show, they were severing themselves from a system that thrived on their vulnerability. The network's reaction was predictable. Panic first, then outrage. Executives dialed their agents, lawyers were summoned, and a flurry of confidentiality notices hit their inboxes before sunset. Behind closed doors, the network debated how to spin the story. Maybe Tammy's health concerns could serve as cover. Maybe Amy's family priorities. But the sisters refused to play along. Within days, Tammy appeared live on TikTok. No lighting crew, no scripted questions, just her phone propped against a candle jar. Her voice was steady but laced with anger as she said, "They filmed everything, except the truth." That single line ignited a fire that no publicist could extinguish. Clips from the live stream spread like wildfire. Millions of views, hashtags multiplying by the hour. Free the Slaytons, justice for Tammy, let me speak. Fans who had once laughed at the sisters were suddenly defending them, sharing screenshots of old episodes, pointing out the moments that now seemed suspiciously staged. Former TLC employees started reaching out anonymously to journalists, confirming what many had suspected, that the drama had often been engineered, that paychecks were smaller than expected, that emotional breakdowns were encouraged because tears test well with audiences. And just like that, the mythology of the show began to collapse. Still, freedom came at a cost. TLC's legal team moved swiftly, claiming breach of contract, threatening injunctions to stop the sisters from profiting off any behind-the-scenes revelations. Papers were filed in Kentucky courts while the tabloids salivated. Amy, ever the peacekeeper, wanted to settle quietly, but Tammy was done being quiet. She recorded another video, this one longer, darker, filled with details. How producers pushed her to stage fights with Amy, how medical scenes were dramatized, how she once begged to stop filming while recovering from surgery, but was told that the pain makes great TV. It was raw, messy, impossible to ignore. Within a week, major news outlets picked up the story, and TLC found itself facing the kind of scrutiny it had managed to avoid for years. But while the network scrambled, the sisters were reinventing themselves in real time. They started a YouTube channel. Not polished, not branded, just them sitting in Tammy's kitchen, talking. No makeup team, no sound engineer, only the hum of the refrigerator and the honesty that had once made them famous. People tuned in not out of voyeurism, but out of solidarity. Their subscriber count exploded overnight, sponsors called, podcast producers pitched ideas, and suddenly, without TLC, they were more popular than ever. Tammy launched The Real Tammy, a podcast where she invited former reality TV cast members to tell their unfiltered stories. Amy started writing a memoir about raising children under the microscope of fame. The sisters who had once been mocked for their weight were now celebrated for their resilience. Every brand wanted a piece of their authenticity, from plus-size fashion labels to mental health campaigns. Yet success brought new dangers. Family tensions flared. Chris Combs, their brother and one-time co-star, felt betrayed, claiming they had abandoned the show that made them household names. Rumors spread that TLC was courting him for a spin-off, dangling promises of his own series if he'd speak out against his sisters. The tabloids framed it as betrayal. Chris versus the Slaytons. Online, fandom fractured into warring tribes, each defending their favorite sibling. The internet that had once mocked the sisters now dissected them with forensic intensity, analyzing every gesture, every silence. Still, amid the chaos, Amy and Tammy pressed on, building an empire on their own terms. Tammy's clothing line, tagline, "Real sizes for real people," sold out within days of launch. Amy's children's book, inspired by bedtime stories she told her sons, hit the bestseller list. They hired their own camera crew, not to fabricate drama, but to document what rebuilding a life after exploitation really looks like. The first episode of their independent docuseries opened not with swelling music, but with silence. Tammy sitting on her porch, breathing the morning air, whispering, "I'm finally free." That clip alone gathered tens of millions of views. But fame, even honest fame, is a restless companion. The trolls returned, angrier than ever, accusing them of hypocrisy, claiming they missed the attention. When Tammy broke down on a live stream after reading a cruel comment, headlines once again reduced her to caricature. The sisters realized that escaping TLC didn't mean escaping the spotlight. It only meant steering it. Yet there was something sacred in that control. They no longer owed anyone a scene, a confession, a breakdown. They could choose silence. And sometimes they did. Weeks would pass without posts, fans wondering if they'd disappeared, only for them to return with laughter and cooking tutorials filmed in Amy's cluttered kitchen. Each mundane detail, flour on the counter, children giggling off camera, felt like defiance. Meanwhile, the entertainment industry watched closely. Streaming platforms offered documentary deals. Journalists framed them as pioneers of reality TV liberation. At award panels, producers debated what the Slatin revolt meant for the future of unscripted television. And somewhere in the chaos, amid lawsuits and live streams and new beginnings, the sisters found something that TLC had never been able to manufacture: peace. It didn't come all at once. It came in small things. Tammy planting flowers outside her house, Amy reading to her kids without a boom mic hovering overhead. There were setbacks, court hearings, leaked contracts, endless online noise. But there was also laughter, genuine and unedited. Sometimes they'd rewatch old episodes late at night, half cringing, half laughing at who they'd once been. "Can you believe they made us reshoot that fight 3 times?" Amy would say, and Tammy would chuckle. They still didn't get it right. They understood now that those versions of themselves were characters, and the real women behind them had finally stepped out of the frame. When asked in an interview what quitting TLC had taught her, Tammy paused for a long time before answering. "It taught me that surviving isn't enough. You gotta live your own edit." That line would become a mantra for a generation of creators tired of being told how to perform their pain. By the year's end, the sisters had settled their legal battles, launched a nonprofit for body positivity education, and signed a deal to produce their own content independently. The same network that once dictated their every move now courted them for distribution rights, eager to stay relevant in a landscape the Slaytons themselves had reshaped. Looking back, entertainment historians would say that 2025 was the year reality television fractured, when 2 women from Dixon, Kentucky, proved that authenticity could outshine any scripted spectacle. But for Amy and Tammy, it wasn't about industry revolutions or revenge. It was about waking up in the morning, looking in the mirror, and recognizing themselves without a production assistant reminding them what to say. Their story, once edited by others, had finally become theirs to tell, and for the first time, they didn't need the cameras to keep rolling. Slayton's lawsuit may be the moment when all of this comes crashing into the light. How the story was managed by the producers, though some of those scenes were real. Insiders say that producers purposefully provoked the sisters to capture raw emotional reactions. Amy and Tammy had little to no control over how they were portrayed from the start, and TLC's editing team carefully selected which moments to highlight, often painting the sisters in the worst possible light. Fans may recall the innumerable scenes of Tammy exploding at their family or Amy crying when she felt overwhelmed. Tammy later revealed that much of her anger stemmed from being cursed into high-stress situations when the crew purposefully delayed meals or kept her waiting for hours before appointments, knowing she would become frustrated. They knew exactly what they were doing, the insider said. And they needed her to snap because that's what made the show addictive. These meltdowns became viral TV moments. According to Amy's friends, she was devastated to see herself portrayed as overwhelmed and unstable when in fact she was doing her best under impossible circumstances. Amy, on the other hand, was forced into situations that highlighted her weaknesses as a mother. Scenes where her home looked messy, where she struggled to manage her young children, or where she clashed with Michael were allegedly exaggerated for dramatic effect. The $50,000 quarrel became the last straw, according to reports, as both sisters felt humiliated by their editing by the conclusion of season 7. But TLC allegedly told them that their contracts forbade them from leaving. Amy's motherhood challenges. Amy Salatin's role as a mother is perhaps the most tragic aspect of this scandal. Since giving birth to her sons, Gage and Glenn, Amy has attempted to strike a balance between her parental duties and the demands of being a reality star. Viewed according to insiders, TLC didn't care